Hey, what's going on? Luke here. I'm here to do a review of round 3 of the 2021 NRL season. And I think the first thing we need to address is the injury toll. Obviously, a super high injury toll in round 3. Probably the highest there's been in a very, very long time. I think a lot of that comes down to the new rule changes, all the concussion stuff as well, because a lot of them were concussions. But I think it's safe to say in this video, there's going to be a lot of talk about the injuries and the effects that it's had on the game in terms of the outcome and just quality of the game. So that being said, it's time to review these games. So the first game of the round saw the Penrith Panthers defeating the Melbourne Storm 12-10 in a grand final rematch. This one was a little bit of a shock to me because I thought the Storm were going to get the job done, especially with Nathan Cleary being ruled out. Pappenhausen, I think, got ruled out after I'd already done my predictions video, but having Pappenhausen and Cleary both out, I thought the Storm would still get the job done, just due to the fact that I thought Pappenhausen was someone they could replace for one game, whereas Cleary, I thought they would struggle. Matt Burton came in, did a brilliant job, just shows the quality that he's got, and just how lucky the Panthers are to have him stuck in reserve grade, and how fortunate the Bulldogs are going to be to have him next year. I'm a Bulldogs fan. I was watching Matt Burton with a keen eye. I was looking to see how he went, and he played really, really good. His kicking game was outstanding. I thought he stepped in and did the majority of the ball playing and kicking. He sort of stepped in and just did Nathan Cleary's role. I thought maybe Illawarra might have stood up and then took Cleary's role, and then Matt Burton was come in and just play second fiddle. But it seemed like Matt Burton just went straight into the Nathan Cleary role and did a fantastic job. I've got to say, Dylan Edwards for me was having his best game that I'd seen him play. I've never really rated Dylan Edwards that highly. I've always just thought he was a beneficial of being in a really good Penrith side. You could have chucked in any of the other fullbacks. I mean, we saw Aikens do a fairly good job for him last year. Now he's gone to the Raiders, and no other team really went for him. And he's gone there. He's playing second fiddle to Clodstad. So I thought, oh well, if they're just chucking in random guys. Like if Edwards went to another side, would he be the first choice, or is he just a beneficial of this Penrith side? But the game he had, for me, it really cemented his spot in terms of actually being a really good fullback and not just benefiting from being around really good players. I thought the touches he had were absolutely brilliant, and also I should say the touches he had were in the first half, because he ended up getting injured in like the very last play of the first half, just a nothing tackle, I think he ended up just in a wrong position and ended up getting injured. Didn't play the second half. Tyrone May actually played fullback, which is interesting to me considering they have Charlie Staines, who is kind of renowned to being a fullback. So instead of putting the guy who has played a bit of fullback at fullback, they chucked Tyrone May, who's kind of a 5'8" sort of utility. Chucked him at fullback. He actually did a pretty good job. Now, obviously, the game went down to the wire. It was a very entertaining game. I thought the Storm were going to get them, and it looked like they had it wrapped up, but Penrith scored right at the end, and then Storm scored at the end, but didn't actually score. Justin Olam, again, 2 weeks in a row, Justin Olam has blown a game, essentially. Well, maybe last week, not so much blown the game. He made a dumb error, but this one, he definitely blew it. He had Adokar open in the wing. All he had to do was pass the ball, and they win. It's as simple as that. The big talking point from that one is obviously the Dylan Edwards injury. It is a big one in terms of the game, but more so how Penrith adapted. So not only did they lose Cleary, but they lost Edwards. Coruscant's already not playing, and they went and they beat Melbourne. That's a hell of a win. To beat Melbourne in any circumstances, it's good. But to do it in the fashion that they did, even a scrappy little win, Kurt Capewell, individual effort, never gave up on the play, went through. I think that trial just represented Penrith perfect. They just kept going for it, and they eventually got the goods in the end. And it was a fantastic win. And for me, all of the little question marks I had over Penrith in terms of how they're going to rebound after last year's disappointment. Are they going to be able to rebound? Yes, they are. They're already rebounding. They're at the top of the table. They're doing a fantastic job. The Storm, they're the ones who seem to be on the downhill. I'm not really sure what's going on with the Storm. They seem to really fade out of games. I know at the moment, Brandon Smith, he'll go on. When he's on the field, they go really, really well. And then as soon as he goes off and they put in that smoothie dude or whoever ends up playing at hooker, they just fade big time. And I don't know if it's a fitness thing or if it's just Brandon Smith in particular being off, but Harry Grant, they can't wait to have him back. They're going to need him. Now moving on to the second game was a Friday night clash between the Dragons and Manly. Dragons picking up a big victory, 38-12. Zach Lomax, fantastic. I mean, everybody for the Dragons was fantastic. Ben Hunt's finally found his feet for the Dragons. Unfortunately, his leg, he's not really going with him. His leg's injured. I think he's broke his leg, something along the lines of that, and he's going to be out for quite some time. So it's quite disappointing for the Dragons. And obviously, it's always going to be hard losing your star halfback. But it's so unfortunate for Ben Hunt. I feel like he gets no breaks in his career. Whenever he finally hits form, just something always derails it. And this seems to be the story of the Dragons too. When they hit form, something always derails it. But I've got to say, the Dragons looking pretty good. For someone who I had at the bottom, I did have them with Manly, so this was a pretty good game in terms of seeing where Manly were. But I had these two competing for the wooden spoon, and the Dragons definitely didn't look like a side who were going to be competing for the spoon. However, this whole Ben Hunt injury, and once again, it's another big injury to a big name player, and this is 2 from 2. So look, Ben Hunt, they're definitely going to miss him. But Corey Norman has actually really stood up in the last couple of games as well. Obviously, he's come back into the side and they've gone 2 from 2 with him in there. So I think he's having a really good season, Corey Norman, so far. He's got his Zach Lomax. His goal kicking is such a big asset to the team. Obviously, kicked all those ones in a row. Looking to go for a record here. I think they're talking about him taking over Michael Ennis, something along the lines of that. But the way he's striking them, he hits them so smoothly. It's just so nice. I haven't really seen a goal kicker who's kicking them like him. A lot of them do the big curl and that, but he doesn't necessarily curl it. He just hits it like an arrow. It's so nice. But in terms of the actual Dragon side as a whole, I think they're doing really well. But this game, I think, was more about Manly and just how bad they actually are. That was absolutely abysmal from them. I was talking about Storm, they can't wait for Harry Grant to come into the side. Manly, they are literally nothing without Tom Trbojevic. And I know there's lots of talk about him, running, and maybe he's going to be back in a couple of weeks, but I can see them really rushing him into the side and sort of him not being ready and then rushing him in yet again and then getting injured yet again. Look, it's an unfortunate position Manly find themselves in, but they are definitely contenders for the spoon, and this game is just another example of it. Moving on to the second game of Friday night, it was the South Sydney Rabbitohs defeating the Sydney Roosters 26-16 in a game that I don't think the scoreline actually represents the game. Obviously, the big talking points were, yet again, injuries. Luke Keary went down, Lachlan Lamb went down. Even Lindsay Collins was sent to hospital after having a head knock. So it definitely wasn't a good night for the Roosters. Actually, it was an abysmal night for the Roosters. But let's not get this twisted. The Roosters didn't lose this one due to injuries. They were already getting absolutely towed up. The Rabbitohs were all over them. And then that's when the injuries started to happen. So I feel like it's easy to look at this game and go, oh, well, Roosters lost Luke Keary. They lost Lachlan Lamb. They had no halves. Oh, well, that's the only reason Rabbitohs won. Definitely not the case. Rabbitohs were all over them, already had the game pretty much wrapped up. And like I said, the scoreline does not reflect the actual game. In fact, when all the injuries started to happen, that's when the Roosters actually started scoring points. I remember Joey Marnie put in a little grubber. But yeah, it was pretty much when all of the Roosters players were injured, that's when they actually started playing decent, funnily enough. The Rabbitohs, they did enough to get the job done. In the first half, essentially. The game was over. Latrell Mitchell now finds himself at the top of the Dally M leaderboards, and I think it's well-deserved. Cody Walker's been fantastic. Adam Reynolds, fantastic. I'm not sure what's going on with the Rabbitohs and Adam Reynolds, but they need to lock him up. He's been fantastic for them. Damien Cook at his best again. Just the whole Rabbitohs side at their best. I think this might be the year for them. I talked about it last year, or talked about it in the preseason. Whenever I talked about it, I said this might be the year for the Rabbitohs, and with how the Roosters team have just fallen off all within one game. Storm aren't doing too well. I think it's between them, Penrith, and the Eels, just in terms of at the moment. I know a lot can happen in a year, but look, Rabbitohs, they're looking very, very strong. And there's no real weak links in their side as well. Now, another thing we should talk about is the whole sin binning situation for the Roosters. Just I don't even know the guy's name. He's not been around first grade for very long. I know he had a hyphenated name. I think it was Fafita was one of them, but he just went and punched. I think it was Joy Arrow in the back of the head. Absolutely ridiculous. I remember when I saw Arrow stay down, I was like, I saw Crichton was sort of talking some smack to him, and then all of a sudden he got back up, and I was like, oh yeah, here we go, milking a penalty. And then they should have just punch him in the back of the head. I was like, how are you going to do that and not think that that's going to get you sent off? I don't know how he didn't get sent off. He should have got sent off. He got sin bin, but he definitely should have been sent off. And that would have been interesting considering all the injuries the Roosters had. If they'd had a player sent off as well, already playing a man down. Actually, it might have benefited them because then they might have had more players on the bench. Could have rotated more a little bit. But it was just not a good night for the Roosters. A fantastic night for the Rabbitohs. They had the cast of Thor there watching. They got the win in front of them. And basically one day the Rabbitohs just eliminated the Roosters from contention from winning the premiership. That's how good of a performance it was from the Rabbitohs. Now moving on to Super Saturday, started off with an upset, probably upset of the round, probably game of the round too, you would have to say. I think it was the biggest comeback in the Warriors history as the New Zealand Warriors picked up a victory over the Raiders, 34-31. It's a very weird scoreline, but George Williams kicked a field goal at halftime. I mean, the Raiders literally had the game won. They were so far ahead. I actually had a bet where I had the Raiders to win, and I was like, oh yeah, sweet, don't need to watch the second half. The Raiders are absolutely smoking them. But I will say, in the first 15 minutes or so, I remember that, the Raiders literally knocked themselves out. Sebastian Kris, Ryan James both knocked themselves out. I think there was another injury too. So the Raiders were down to one interchange player. Curtis Scott ended up breaking his ribs and had to play the whole second half with it. So this is what I'm talking about in terms of the injuries are a big talking point, that the pace of the game is a big talking point. And I will be doing a video probably tomorrow talking about an 18th man, the possibility of it, and probably just more the probability of it, because I think it needs to happen. This is another example. We'll get to the Sharks game later on, but this was the first example of the weekend where your team even the Roosters as well. There's been so many games this round where teams had no subs, and you already knew the result because they just had no subs. Teams going to run out of gas. The Raiders had such a huge lead, but they just ran out of petrol, and the Warriors got back into the game. And obviously the big call from the referee, or the lack of call, I should say, Perinara, I've always said he's one of the worst refs. I think this just cemented it. He is definitely the worst ref in the NRL. I've never liked Henry Perenara as a referee. I know he played, but it just shows you that players don't make the best referees. And just how he missed that call, the forward pass was absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. There were a lot of calls throughout the weekend that weren't great. This is definitely one of them. There was another one with the Tigers. We'll get to that in the Tigers game. But yeah, just a terrible call from the referee. And it led to the momentum turning, and it led to the Warriors making their big comeback. So although, yes, the Raiders did concede 20 straight points and ended up losing the game because of that, you can say the defense was pretty bad. But look, they had to deal with a lot of injuries. They also had to deal with some really shitty referee calls. And I think we can all agree it's so hard to stop the momentum once it gets going. And that's the thing that got the Warriors going. So look, I can say it didn't necessarily cost the Raiders the game, but it did play a huge part in it. So I understand Ricky Stewart, he was super frustrated. He went to the press conference and said, I'm not talking because I'm going to get fined. So look, I completely understand. But in terms of the Warriors, absolutely fantastic performance from them. Backs against the ball. No Chanel Harris-DeVito. I wrote them off completely. I said there was no way they were going to win. But Sean O'Sullivan, I thought he actually played really, really well. I know Nathan Brown came out and said that he's pretty much a like-for-like replacement for Harris-DeVito. And I thought, not really. But turns out he actually was. Turns out he actually played pretty darn well, and the Warriors got the job done. Fantastic performance, led from Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. Congratulations, Warriors. Great starts of the season. Now into the second game of Super Saturday. Wasn't so super for me. My Bulldogs went down 24-0 to the Brisbane Broncos. Yet again, held to nil for the Bulldogs. And this time it's even more embarrassing. Last week I can hack it because it's against Penrith, top of the table, made the grand final last year. Just probably the best team in the comp. This one against the Broncos, the worst team, not even the worst team in the comp. Wouldn't spend as last year, but the Bulldogs side is so frustrating. I'd love to sit here and say, the Broncos were so heaps good and they played amazing and on this and that. And for the first half hour, I was watching it and I was like, the Bulldogs, we can definitely win this one. Even when Elliott went through and he threw the ball forward and Kyle Flanagan dropped it, I was like, that's a good sign. Making line breaks. Didn't finish it, but it'll come. Newsflash, it didn't come. Broncos, it came for them, but it didn't come for the Bulldogs. Just terrible. And the fact that the game went from being in a winnable position at 2-0 at half time and then all of a sudden ended up 24-0, I think that's the most disappointing thing. And just how quickly it happened. It went from being all right, 2-0, and then it went to 8-2, and then it was 12-2 or whatever it was. And then just the try from the kickoff, it just killed it. Just killed the whole game. Now, for the whole time of me talking about this game, all I've done is talk about how bad the Bulldogs were. But I got to say, the Broncos, they were pretty impressive. They were pretty decent. Nothing too flashy, nothing too outstanding. I mean, the game was pretty much a stinker. Although they ended up scoring some late tries, there wasn't too much going on. Like I said, at halftime it was 2-0, so it definitely wasn't a really good game or anything. For Broncos fans, I'm sure they don't care. They're finally going to win. That's all that matters. Now onto the last game of Super Saturday. It's the Parramatta Eels defeating the Cronulla Sharks 28-4. Now I'll be honest, I didn't see much of this game. I was actually out, but I was watching bits and pieces on it because I could see I was at a pub. I could see the game and I could see the scoreline blowing out. What I didn't realize at the time was how many injuries the Sharks were having. I was looking on Twitter and I was looking on Reddit and seeing the reviews from people and what people were saying about the game. And the general consensus was that the Sharks put up a pretty good effort and the scoreline doesn't necessarily reflect the game, and just the injuries ruined the game, essentially. I looked it up. I saw Wade Graham and the Cora both went off, and also Will Kennedy went off with a head injury as well. Then you had Katoa, I think, on the wing, ended up with a knee injury. So the Sharks literally had no subs, and they'll come up against one of the best teams in the comp. There was no chance. It's pretty much what I've been saying. Once you get to a certain point in terms of injuries, once you got no bench, there's just no way you're going to win it unless you got a 50-0 lead. And even then, I wouldn't be confident in saying you'd win. It's so hard to win when you've got no subs, and especially with the games fastening up every year. It's getting so fast and getting so dangerous to play. And I think it was inevitable the Eels are going to win. I think before the game, the Eels are going to win. I think they're the better side in general, but just you add in all the injuries to the Sharks throughout the game, and there was just no way they were going to win this one. I know they started off pretty strong, the Sharks, but I think the Eels are always going to run away with this one. Maybe not by this scoreline. I thought it might have been a little bit more scrappy in terms of the scoreline, but look, the Eels, it's no surprises that they won. They got a very strong side. Gutherson's very strong. Ferguson's finding his form again. And also, Niokore in the centres, he's been fine. And I think it's by sheer luck, the fact that Wong and Blake got injured or suspended or whatever happened to him. But it's just sheer luck that they ended up Niokore in the centres. And he's been an absolute fine for them. Stuck on the bench now, they chuck him into the centres. And he's been one of the form centres of the comp the last couple of weeks since going there. And the main thing is also he's getting the ball to Ferguson, which Ferguson's really been starved of the ball the last couple of years. So the fact that they finally got a centre who's getting the ball to him, I think it's going to do wonders for the Eels, because Fergie, he can produce some magic with the ball, no doubt about that. So yeah, the Eels back to their best, and with the starting fall of the Roosters and also the form of the Melbourne Storm not being that great, it opens up an opportunity for the Eels. So they need to take this with both hands. They need to make the most of it. Now time to move on to Sunday over football. We had the West Tigers defeating the Newcastle Knights in an upset. I thought the Knights were going to win this one, but it was 24-20, a comeback victory, sort of a comeback victory. I mean, the Knights had a big comeback. They were riding the momentum in front of the home crowd. The crowd was really willing them. When Mitchell Pearce went over and scored, you could feel the momentum turn, and then Frizzell went over and got the lead, and I thought, yep, Knights got this one. And all of a sudden, Shibasaki dropped the ball for about the 50th time, and the Tigers pounced literally from the scrum, Nofaluma in the corner, and wins the game for him. It was a pretty scrappy game. It wasn't the best quality of game, but the Tigers actually were quite impressive. I thought Luke Brooks, for as much criticism as he's got this season, and in fact the last couple of seasons, I thought he really stepped up and played pretty well. Adam Dewey, a big inclusion for them. I know he played last week, but just his second game back, I thought he was pretty big for him. But the fine for the Tigers, Dane Laurie, he's been absolutely outstanding. The fact that he was just in reserve grade at Penrith just shows the depth of Penrith. The fact they had him, they got Matt Burton, a couple of those sort of guys, Charlie Staines, all getting the opportunity this year, and they're all taking them with two hands. It just shows you the development that the Panthers have and why teams are rating their reserve grade sides, because they've got such quality players. So you'd be crazy not to look at it, because you've just seen that Matt Burton just played fantastic for Penrith against the Storm. You've got Dane Laurie starring for the Tigers every week. Charlie Staines is doing quite well for him. You add in all the other juniors who've already come through the ranks at Penrith to get them in this position. But yeah, fantastic team effort from the Tigers. Everybody stepped up, and even when they were down and out, in my opinion, I thought they were gone. But they got a bit lucky, and they took full advantage of it within the first play. Nofaluma in the corner. Could have easily just went to shit. We see so many times teams get opportunities late in the game and they rush it, like the Knights did. The young English guy, they had Bradman Best pull out just before the game, and they also had someone else pull out as well. So they had a couple guys who shouldn't have been playing, like Shibasaki. I don't even think he was supposed to play, and in the end he kind of cost them the game. But they had Dominic Young, I think that's his name. He came in, he was trying to do things right at the end, trying to force the issue, and that's exactly what the Tigers could have done, but they didn't, and they ended up scoring. And full credit to the Tigers, because I thought the Knights were absolutely going to demolish them, but it didn't happen. Tigers got the win, and it just might be the thing that sparks their season. A little bit of luck to get them into the game and win the game, and that's all you need sometimes. That's all you need is a little bit of luck. Now moving on to the last game of the round, it was the Gold Coast Titans absolutely thrashing the North Queensland Cowboys 44-8. I thought this one was going to happen. I thought this one was coming. I did a bet. I picked the Titans 13 plus. I even did a bet that I cancelled last minute where I had not first try scorers, but anytime try scorers to David Fafita and also AJ Brimson, in which both of that happened. So I was absolutely spewing that. I didn't put the bet on. However, I did have the 13 plus one, so I got that one. I said in my preview that they'd win 13 plus, and I was quite confident. This Cowboys side, as soon as I saw Michael Morgan was out, I was like, they are done. There is no way they can do it. Jay Clifford hasn't really shown anything this season. I don't think he's going to be a great signing for the Knights next year. I thought going into the season, I thought if they released him and let him go to the Knights, I think that would have been a good thing. However, I think this season is just going to stall his development so much, going to kill all the confidence. Saw Josh Maguire come out after the game and do an interview with Fox Sports and just talk about how this has been the same thing happening for the last couple of years. And he's pretty much spot on. It's funny to see Josh Maguire of all people talking about it, considering all the stuff he said in the past about Origin and all his little comments about winners and losers and all that sort of stuff. But it was quite an honest interview, and that's what the Cowboys have been. They've been quite honest. Todd Payton's been honest. The players have been honest. But that doesn't mean anything, because if you're going out in the field and producing absolute shit, which is what they're doing, and it's very frustrating because I feel like the Cowboys side should be a lot better than what they are. They've got enough good players to be better than a wooden spoon contender side. They should be at least pushing for the 8. They've got a lot of good rep players, but the thing is though, a lot of these rep players were rep players like 5-6 years ago. They're not in their peak anymore. The game's moved on. You guys like Jordan McLean in that. On paper, they probably should be a lot better, but then when you actually watch them and you see them, you see guys like Cohen Hess in that, you're like, yeah, on paper, rep player, but they're not really a rep quality player. They're just making those sides. They made them a long time ago, and they're sort of living off that. So yeah, the Cowboys maybe in hindsight, maybe nowhere near as good as what I thought they were going to be, but just the fact that they lost by that much, I didn't see it coming by that much. But once the Titans got the momentum going, they're a very dangerous side. You got your Fafita, you got Big Tino, you got Brimson out the back. Look, your Haas are pretty good. I thought Tana Boy was actually pretty good for them. Maybe going forward, you go with him. Ash Taylor, I know he's on big money, but maybe you go with him. He's got more experience playing with Dave Fafita and all that sort of stuff. He's got combos with him, and he seems to be a good prospect. So maybe you go with him long term. Maybe you go with him going forward, because I thought he did a fantastic job. Thought Philip Semi was dangerous, but at the same time, the Cowboys were so bad that it's hard to look too much into this side. It's like the Titans last week. The Broncos were pretty bad. They just beat the Cowboys. They're pretty two lackluster sides, and they did get big wins against them. And if you're going back a couple of years ago, if they'd beat them, that's a big achievement. I know the Titans fans are like, yay, we're the best team in Queensland. But the other two sides are both wooden spoon contenders at this point. So it's not really that big of an achievement. It just means that you're better than the other two wooden spoon guys. So look, it is a big win for the Titans just in terms of them being the best team in Queensland, and it means a lot to them. But going forward, I wouldn't look too much into this one because I think we all knew it was coming. But yeah, it is disappointing for the Cowboys in the sense that I didn't think they'd actually get 40 points put on them. But I'm not really surprised though at the same time. But yeah, Titans absolutely fantastic. Cowboys not so much. Anyways, that's my little review of round 3. Leave in the comment section below who are your standouts for round 3. Any standout players, any standout teams. Let me know, did you enjoy the round? What are your thoughts on the injuries? There's so much to talk about, so leave a comment. We can have a bit of discussion in the comment section below. Also, while you're at it, go ahead and give me a follow on social media. It's on the screen right now. It's Mr. Luke and YT. My Facebook is just Mr. Luke, so go ahead and give me a follow, give me a like, do all that sort of stuff. My Snapchat's also Mr. Luke and YT as well. But yeah, give me a follow on social media. Leave a like on the video too while you're at it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Turn the notification bell. That way you never miss out on the video, and I'm making a lot of content these days, so definitely go ahead and do that. But that's how I'm going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See yous.